Sharon tasted the newly cooked soup, wrinkled her nose, and irritably threw the spoon into the sink. "Too salty, and the taste is all wrong. Sweetish like some vegetable compote." The over-salted, sweet-smelling soup, which might only appeal to someone fond of Asian cuisine, was just another mark in today's absurdly frustrating day. Things had gone downhill from the very start. She'd woken suddenly at 6:30 a.m., despite having 3 more hours to sleep, particularly annoying on her first day of vacation. After suffering until dawn, she finally dragged herself out of bed, feeling far from refreshed, dropped a cream bottle in the bathroom, broke a fingernail, and, as the crowning achievement, burned an ugly hole in her perfectly wearable blouse. Looking at the melted, wrinkled fabric, Sharon questioned herself. Why had she needed to iron this blouse right now? There was no answer, yet the ruined garment, one of the few that truly suited her, was proof of her folly. She'd tried to make peace with the universe by cooking soup, which Denny always called her culinary masterpiece. But instead of its usual rich, noble taste, she'd produced this sweetly salty disaster. Sharon finally accepted that today was definitely not her day. Such days, when nothing worked and everything went wrong, had become frighteningly frequent lately. It was time to face the truth. It was about state of mind and her mood, which were far from normal. For days now, she had thought of nothing but her husband and her place in his life, if she still had one at all. Though Sharon had no concrete evidence for her doubts, she sensed that proof wouldn't be long in coming. Why beat around the bush? Denny is cheating on me, I'm certain of it. We've been together for 10 years, and I always thought our relationship was genuine and strong. I loved him, worried about him, cared for him, tried to be a good wife. Just look at my cooking journey. I spent years injuring my fingers, nearly cutting off my pinky while carving a chicken, burned myself countless times, cursed humanity's need to eat daily, wasted mountains on food, and repeatedly clogged the kitchen drain. But I persevered. From someone who mangled potatoes rather than peeled them, I became an excellent cook. I'll never forget Denny saying, "Sharon, this is a masterpiece, better than Mum's stew." These past 10 years held so much, good and bad, sad and funny. We were truly together through it all. Wasn't I there when his best friend since childhood, practically his brother, died, and Denny was so shocked he couldn't even button his shirt? Or when he quarrelled with his foolish boss, quit on the spot, and suddenly found himself unemployed with a mortgage to pay? Did I reproach him? No, I understood and supported him, though I privately wished he could have been less principled and more tactful when needed. And what about his complete inability to handle household repairs? Did I ever reproach him for that? I could have, especially given my kitchen triumphs. Denny was genuinely hopeless at home maintenance, though he eagerly attempted everything, fixing appliances, clearing drains, mounting shelves. After several mishaps that left our home master with minor injuries, I decided we'd simply call professionals when needed. Denny was precious to me, just as he was. And how could I forget his devotion when I slipped on spring ice and broke my leg? The care and love he showed me, stuffing me with fruit, seafood, nuts and supplements after learning about my tendency toward fractures. Then there was that painful memory in Sharon's mind, their dreams of children, or even just one child. Everyone around them had children, but for her and Denny this remained elusive. "Are you going to leave me now?" she asked, looking away. "Why should I?" he wondered. "Or have you found a suitable excuse to get rid of me?" "Stop it, I'm serious. Why would you want to tie yourself to a barren woman like me?" Sharon grinned bitterly. "I don't even know. I'll have to think about it." Denny looked at his wife very seriously. "I should make a list of your shortcomings and merits, and see which weighs more." "Oh, well, it's already made." He took a crumpled piece of paper from his pocket and studied it carefully. Well, it's a lot of faults for one man, but you know what outweighs everything? I love you. And the baby? Well, there are many other ways, aren't there? We'll get ready and try. At the very least, we'll adopt. How she loved him at that moment. Then there was that unforgettable day when they bought an enormous, expensive sofa, only to realise after delivery that this monstrous masterpiece of furniture craft wouldn't fit through their entryway door. Denny refused to return it, declaring it a matter of honour. Either he would conquer the sofa, or the sofa would conquer him. They spent the evening sitting on their purchase outside the entrance, embracing, while bewildered passers-by and neighbours watched them wait for some miracle worker who could disassemble it without damage. It became one of the best evenings of their lives, followed by one of their best nights. Their first New Year's Eve as husband and wife was another magical night. Driving to the friend's country house, they got completely lost in snow-covered village alleys, finally stalling in a snowdrift minutes before midnight. They passed champagne between them, drinking from the bottle, eating tangerines and gazing into each other's eyes. Soft snowflakes descended silently, settling on Denny's hair and shoulders, glistening on his brow. Their tangerine and wine-scented breath mingled in the frosty air. It was the most enchanting night of Sharon's life. How many such precious moments lie stored in Sharon's memory, distant yet unforgotten. Though truth be told, Denny isn't exactly the easiest husband. His quirks would have sent another woman running long ago. Take his obsession with fishing and hunting. Why would a modern, prosperous man be drawn to such primitive pursuits? What drives him to regularly escape to the wilderness, sitting for days in mud and water, catching colds and developing calluses? And the money spent on these hobbies, the spinning rods, lures, and endless equipment. She discovered just how expensive his passion was when she decided to buy him a genuine leather hunting bag for his birthday. The purchase not only consumed her entire gift budget, but depleted her shoe fund too. Though Denny later solved that problem by buying her the shoes, the cost of hunting gear continued to astound her. But the worst began when Denny's hunting or fishing trips were successful, and he returned home with his spoils. Horrible, dirty, unbearably stinking bags lay on the hallway floor, and the washing machine hummed, trying to cope with impossibly dirty clothes. She began to feel like a caveman's wife, smelling of wet feathers, with fish scales stuck to her feet. After all the torment, patience, and heroic struggle with fish and game, a plate of duck pâté or fried pieces of wild meat would be proudly placed on the table. "Sharon, try it, please," said the hunter, looking at her with transparent, rapturous eyes. Sharon, completely intolerant of the game, opened her mouth to refuse, but looking at her favourite man, his eyes full of pride and childlike hope, she suddenly felt as if she were about to offend a child. The tasting always ended with her expressions of delight, and his assurances that he would bring more next time. She could only be grateful they didn't live in Africa, where Denny might bring home part of an elephant carcass as a trophy. Though, to be honest, she wasn't exactly easy to live with either. Denny could probably say a thing or two about her passion for orchids. She adored these beautiful flowers, which reminded her of miniature elf and fairy faces. Sharon's home collection contained more than 40 orchids, and Denny courageously tolerated this arrangement. Whenever he bumped into yet another pot that had suddenly appeared before him, he would freeze in terror. The almost weightless, unstable orchid pots were surprisingly easy to overturn, and Denny clearly didn't want to risk his life and family harmony by knocking some rare cattleya off the windowsill, especially since these falls always left traces of soil that he could never successfully hide. But who really minds orchids? They stand quietly and peacefully in their places, frightening no one. The same couldn't be said about her dear husband's other hobby, his obsession with hockey. That was something truly difficult to endure. Just imagine this well-mannered, polite, intelligent man who normally maintained perfect self-control would, several times a year, transform into a screaming, jumping, curse and blessing, spewing madman. In their first year together, Sharon barely survived until the end of the World Hockey Championship. Though Denny watched it on television, he shouted as if their apartment contained the entire crowded stadium. "Denny, how often do they play the World Cup?" Sharon asked cautiously. "Every year," Denny replied, rubbing his hands together. But as they say, if you can't beat it, join it. And Sharon made a strategic decision to become part of hockey, or rather a fan. She prepared thoroughly, reading several articles and studying the national team's roster before resolutely sitting down one evening beside her nervously fidgeting husband. "Listen, where's he going? Look at number 5. He's a defenceman, but he's moving to the left, forward position," she suddenly declared in an authoritative tone, eyeing her raging spouse with an expert's look. "Now he'll interfere. If we play like this against the Swedes, what chance do we have?" Denny froze. Even if a flying saucer had landed right then and a greenish humanoid had emerged waving a webbed paw, he couldn't have looked more astonished. "You think so?" he managed to squeeze out. "Of course," Sharon declared authoritatively. "There are simply no other options. Why mess with what works? Don't you agree?" Denny nodded respectfully, smiled uncertainly, and carefully slid the cup of chips toward her. A few days later they were both jumping on the couch and yelling like crazy people. Sharon had become just like Denny, freaking out, counting down to the final siren, cursing at the referee's mistakes, and consuming so much junk food during matches that the next day she'd anxiously calculate how many hours of squats it would take to burn off all those calories. Despite finding herself unwillingly drawn into the frenzy of hockey, Sharon managed to exact her revenge. "Sharon, I am shocked," he exclaimed upon seeing yet another dark, handsome Eastern prince on the television screen. "You are an intelligent person. How can you possibly watch this nonsense?" Sharon had a deep affection for Turkish soap operas. They had utterly captivated her. "So what?" Sharon retorted, defending her idols. "It's not nonsense, it's life." "Oh, really?" Denny sarcastically responded, sitting down next to her and looking at the screen. "Life? Let's see, who is this, for example?" "That's the main heroine. She's a poor girl. Her mother is forcing her to marry a rich man she doesn't love. But she loves a poor man just like herself. They've been friends since childhood, and now she's sitting at home alone and miserable," Sharon eagerly explained. "Poor? Sitting at home? Of course, in a 3-story villa with a pool. You know, I wouldn't mind being poor like that. And what's that around her neck? Sharon, if she sold that rock, she could live comfortably for the rest of her life without needing any husband, rich or poor." Denny laughed. "Oh, I can't take this seriously. Sharon, how can you watch this?" "Fool," Sharon muttered under her breath, stubbornly fixating her gaze on the television. Yet despite his initial disdain, Denny frequently became an unwilling witness to these Turkish dramas set against the backdrop of the Turkish seas, and gradually found himself drawn into this world. One day, Sharon invited 2 of her childhood friends over. They sat in the kitchen, enjoying cake and chatting about everything under the sun. Naturally, the conversation turned to their favourite soap operas. "Oh, girls," one of them sighed dreamily. "While I was home with the flu, I watched Endless Love. It was so interesting. My favourite, Burak Özçivit, was in it, looking so handsome with his beard. He's just perfect." "What are you talking about, Cassandra?" Denny suddenly interjected, entering the kitchen to open another bottle of wine for the ladies. "That's not Burak Özçivit, that's Burak Deniz." He's the one with the curly hair who stars in all those silly shows for teenage girls. Burak Ascevet is a serious actor, with respectable films like The Magnificent Century and Osman. And there's that other one, Sharon, the one with your favourite plot about Rich Nihat and poor Kemal. The women sitting in the kitchen collectively sighed in admiration, while Denny, cursing his loose tongue, blushed deeply and hurriedly left the room. And so they lived. Sharon cheered for the national hockey team, ate game meat and bony riverfish, and cooked soups. Denny battled household repairs, secretly watched Turkish dramas, dodged suddenly appearing orchids, and enjoyed Sharon's cooking. Sharon gazed at a photograph hanging on the wall in a frame. The photo captured a moment when neither she nor Denny knew they were being photographed. Denny was embracing her with both arms, kissing her neck, while she, half turned towards the camera, was laughing. It was clear that these two were happy and content with each other. Sharon's gaze shifted from the photograph to a small sheet of graph paper. This sheet, folded several times, had fallen out of Denny's pocket the day before, unnoticed by him in the dim light of the hallway. On the paper, written in Denny's hand, were dates and names. It didn't take a brilliant analyst to figure out that this was some sort of schedule for the next few days. For example, tomorrow, Tuesday, there's something scheduled called G. Judging by the context, that must be the gym. Thursday, P. On Friday, there's an art exhibition at the art gallery. Oh, that's even written without abbreviations. It must be a critical event. But I wonder, since when has he become so interested in painting? Next to each date was the capital letter D, and next to the gym, pool and gallery was the letter T. Obviously, these were the initials of names. D must be Diana, and T is probably Tracy? Poor thing, he even has to write down the women's names to keep track. Sharon crumpled the unfortunate piece of paper in her fist and then angrily tossed it away. The crumpled ball of paper hit the floor with a soft thud and rolled slightly to the side. Sharon couldn't hold back any longer. She buried her face in her hands and cried bitterly. But then, catching herself, she resolutely wiped her face and stared angrily out the window. Sharon was born into a family of doctors. Her parents worked in the city hospital performing surgeries, working round-the-clock shifts, conducting consultations. It was a mystery how they maintained their cheerfulness, given their workload. Sharon adored her parents, though when any adults asked, "Sharon, when you grow up, will you become a doctor like your mum and dad?" her immediate and firm response was always, "No, of course not." "But why?" "Because I want to see my children more than once a week," Sharon would retort, effectively ending any further discussion on the topic. Since childhood, she was rather lazy, content to go with the flow, dabbling in one thing after another and studying just enough to avoid scolding. After graduation, she enrolled in a pedagogical college, solely because her father secured a targeted admission for her. Serenity was Sharon's primary life goal. "Sharon, you should have been born a couch cushion," her close friend Cassandra would laugh. "You'd just lie there on your side, not thinking about anything." Once, with a large and boisterous group of friends, they spontaneously decided to go to the sea. Just a couple of hours on the plane, and there it was, vast, beautiful, gentle and warm. That evening, Sharon declined to join her friends for dinner at a restaurant. For some reason, she wanted to be alone, to stroll along the nearly deserted and unusually quiet beach after 9. She slowly walked along the very edge of the water, where the sand, recently covered by a retreating wave, was wet and pleasantly cooled her feet. She held onto her hat, just in case. Of course, the accessory was chic, but honestly very impractical. The wide brim billowed like sails, and at the slightest breeze, the hat tried to fly away. Several times Sharon had already chased the runaway hat across the beach, naturally looking ridiculous and weird. Suddenly she felt something explode in her head, and seawater rushed into her ears and mouth. Confused and disoriented, she tried to scream, but only swallowed more water. Sharon might have become the first vacationer in history to drown in shallow water, but fortunately that didn't happen. The next moment she felt strong arms beneath her, pulling her up towards the air. She desperately clung to one of those saving arms and suddenly heard a soft, pleading voice. "Miss, please let go. You're digging your nails into my arm. It hurts." She fearfully released her grip and looked at the speaker. Immediately, everything became even worse than before. He might not have been the actor from her favourite Turkish series, but he was undeniably handsome. He had chiselled features, light hair, possibly bleached by the sun, grey, slightly squinted eyes and very tanned skin that made his white smile stand out even more. His broad shoulders and fluid, powerful movements made him almost perfect. "Excuse me, where are you taking me? I mean, us. What's happening?" she finally asked. The man, probably in his early 30s, looked down at her with a strange expression. "Where? To a medical station, of course. You have half a bottle sticking out of your leg," he rasped. Sharon elegantly brushed the wet, sandy strands of hair from her face, looked at her leg, strangely wrapped in her own scarf, and nearly fainted. A large shard of thick bottle glass was indeed embedded in her foot, and it showed no signs of coming out on its own. "Don't you feel anything at all?" he asked in surprise. "No, it must be shock," she authoritatively declared, being the daughter of doctors, and finally lost consciousness. She woke up on a couch, and unfortunately, instead of the face of the beach macho, a funny red head with a dishevelled beard loomed over her. "What happened to me? Where am I?" Sharon asked nonsensically. "You're in the hospital," the man patiently explained. "You have a foot injury, so I'm afraid your active vacation is over. But don't worry, your knight will return soon and help you." "My what?" she asked fearfully. "Knight, the guy who brought you here. He's a real hero. I tell you, first, it's a good 3 kilometres from here to the shore. Second, it's good he didn't pull out the glass. You would have bled out. Besides, here he is." Her saviour was dressed in white shorts and a light checked shirt, with sunglasses perched on his nose, looking even more handsome than Sharon remembered. Now he was truly comparable to her idols from Turkish melodramas. Sharon awkwardly sat up and carefully lowered her feet to the floor. Her tightly bandaged leg throbbed, and a sharp pain shot through it as it touched the surface. "Ouch!" she cried out, looking pitifully at the doctor. "Does it hurt?" She heard the familiar soft voice and turned to look at the man. He stood before her, smiling as if seeing her dishevelled with smeared mascara was the greatest joy of his life. Denny turned out to be a resident. His family had a small house near the sea, where he lived with his mother. He visited Sharon every day, bringing flowers, oranges, ice cream, and driving her along the coast in an old rattling car. He was always eager to carry her in his arms. They would stop at small cafes with tables facing the sea, sit under striped awnings, and enjoy incredibly delicious pastries. "Denny, I want to lose weight on this vacation," she lamented, taking another bite of the delicious local cuisine. "Nonsense! You look wonderful. You don't need to lose weight at all," Denny smiled, offering her a scoop of ice cream. They would sit side by side on the shore, listening to the sea, feeling that the world around them had changed forever. "Sharon, I love you and want you to be my wife," Denny declared after a week of knowing her. "What? Are you crazy? We've known each other for 7 days. No, you're definitely insane," she exclaimed, as shocked and stunned as when she fell into the sea. "Not 7, almost 8. And it doesn't matter if we've known each other for 8 days, months or years," he smiled. "But I can't stay here with you. I have to go home. I have a job, a contract," she cried, feeling both helpless and joyful. She thought this strange, incredible, unbelievable situation would simply resolve itself, because Denny would say, "Well, if you can't, you can't. Bye." Instead, he was silent for a long time, then stubbornly shook his head and said, "If you can't stay, then I'll come with you. I can't live without you. So, will you marry me?" "Are you crazy? Leave here? Leave the sea, the sun, for our land of snow and mosquitoes?" "No, you're definitely crazy, and I'm just as crazy as you are." "Of course." "I agree," Sharon replied. To Sharon's amazement, Denny actually moved to her hometown. Somehow, within a few days, he charmed all her friends and relatives, gaining their full support and her parents' blessing. "What a wonderful man!" exclaimed Cassandra, a woman quite sceptical about men, considering them only suitable for procreation. "Just amazing! What did he see in you?" Cassandra suddenly declared. "What do you mean?" Sharon was offended. "In the direct sense," Cassandra replied frankly. "Sharon, you two are entirely different. You're lazy and indecisive. Oh, don't pretend to be offended. Who else will tell you the truth? And he's like a spring, a perpetual motion machine. Come on, Sharon, get off the couch, or you won't keep up with him." Sharon thought long and hard about her friend's words. Undoubtedly, Cassandra was right. She and Denny were very different, and the longer they lived together, the more noticeable the difference became. She was lazy. There was no denying it. This laziness manifested not only in her lifestyle, but also in her thoughts. Problems that arose in her life she preferred to solve in a simple and universal way. She stopped thinking about them, at least for a while. Denny was the opposite. It seemed that for Denny there were no problems that could seriously challenge him. He simply set a task and solved it in the shortest possible time, so quickly that Sharon sometimes didn't even have an opportunity to fully grasp the task itself. Denny was a programmer of some kind of software specialist, an IT guy, as they say, and finding a job was no problem for him. Just a couple of days after his final move, he was getting ready to go somewhere, sipping coffee from a huge mug. "And where are you going?" Sharon asked in surprise. In her mind, someone who had so radically changed their lives needed at least 6 months just to get their bearings, adjust to the new environment, and consider their options. "Where am I going?" Denny asked, surprised. "To work, of course. I may be a young husband, but I have no intention of living off my wife. By the way, I bumped my elbow on the corner 3 times while shaving. Sharon, your bathroom is impossibly small, and so is the whole apartment. Let's expand." "Right now?" she asked, frightened. The apartment had been inherited from her grandmother and was indeed very small. "There's nothing complicated or terrible about it. The main thing is to start. I've already calculated and planned everything. Look, we sell this mini apartment." He chuckled. "I have about the same amount in cash. We take out a loan to cover the rest, and we buy a normal, spacious 3-bedroom apartment. So don't plan anything for Sunday. We're going to look at options." "What options?" Sharon asked, even more frightened. "Apartment options, Sharon," Denny nodded. "Why do we need a 3-bedroom apartment?" she continued, afraid. "Denny, that's a lot of money. And what do we need 3 rooms for? It would take all day just to dust them." "Honey, we won't always be just the 2 of us. I intend to seriously consider expanding our family. Sharon, we're going to have children. And as for the money, don't worry about it. Don't worry about anything. Everything will be fine." He did everything so quickly and decisively, whether it was getting married, moving to a new city, buying an apartment, getting a loan, or finding a job. Within a month, they moved into a large, bright apartment with a huge balcony. It was harder to get used to Denny's pace of life, which Sharon found abnormal. Her friend Cassandra's predictions were coming true. She was indeed tired with keeping up with her husband. He always needed to do something, go somewhere, or meet someone. And he wanted to do all of this with her. "Sharon, I'm going to the gym this evening. Are you coming?" Denny said before leaving for work this morning. "No, I'm not going today," Sharon said with a tensed smile. "Are you sure?" he asked, looking at his wife and sighing. "Absolutely." She smiled even wider, while her thoughts raced. I wonder what would happen if I said I was going. Would he have to cancel his meeting with Dee? What a nerve. And he's so sure I won't go to the club. Well, I'll show him. I'll go, but not the way he thinks. And I'll see what kind of sport my dear husband is really into. Why is he so obsessed with that gym? Why do people hate themselves so much that they're willing to torture their muscles and ligaments with iron machines? Sharon understood the need for physical activity and recognised the role of sports in people's lives. However, she was terrified of gyms, mainly because of the people who looked like they had been going there for years. Everyone was incredibly thin, slim and muscular, making Sharon and people like her feel like representatives of a poor, backward, dead-end branch of evolution. So later that day, Sharon got to the sports complex where she and Denny had memberships. Trying to blend into the background, she hid behind a huge lady who pedalled merrily. Denny entered the gym, worked out diligently, sweated on the treadmill, and disappeared into the locker room. Neither Dee nor T ever appeared, and Denny showed no interest in any of the ladies present. On Thursday she dragged herself to the pool, where it was Denny's next training session. Well, today someone will definitely be there, because he didn't even call me to go with him, she thought resentfully. Denny was already there, swimming laps in the pool, his broad shoulders and white cap periodically visible as Sharon cautiously kept her distance. A couple of times she thought Denny was looking in her direction, and she quickly ducked underwater, her heart pounding. Yet all her efforts were in vain. He didn't meet anyone. Doesn't mean anything, Sharon thought stubbornly. No normal woman wants a date at the pool. But the art gallery, that's a different story. "Sharon, will you come with me to the gallery on Friday?" Denny suddenly asked later that evening. "Why should I?" She raised her eyebrows in surprise. "Why? I told you, Tom has an exhibition. You remember my buddy, don't you? I told you about him. We met about 15 years ago when he came to paint seascapes. He didn't have a penny, so he lived with us, and as payment, he painted my mum's portrait. Great guy. So, he has a solo exhibition." What an art connoisseur! Tom asked him to come. A very convenient excuse to sneak out of the house, Sharon thought to herself, but said, "No, darling, I feel bad. Probably ate something not fresh. Have a nice time." The exhibition was unexpectedly crowded. It turned out that Tom had indeed become a decent artist. Otherwise, how else could one explain the numerous groups of people standing in front of the paintings, looking at them meaningfully, nodding their heads, and speaking softly to each other? "Yes, he has become much stronger in composition, certainly. And the colour palette, have you noticed? Amazingly well crafted. And what precise control of tone." The popularity of the artist turned out to be Sharon's advantage. At least she managed to hide among the exhibition visitors while keeping an eye on her broad-shouldered husband in his perfectly fitting suit. And something went wrong again. Women constantly appeared near Denny, and many of them were very attractive. He smiled, talked, even kissed a couple of ladies' hands, but all this was not suspicious at all. Finally he hugged someone, but the object of his affection was not some beautiful woman, but a tall, bald man with a long nose. It turned out to be the exhibition's host, Tom, with whom Denny had been friends for many years. So, what if he hasn't met any women? It means nothing. Anyway, it's better to leave now so as not to run into him. You shouldn't have refused to go to the exhibition, Sharon, he said when he got home. It was a very decent event. Tom, it turns out, is already a well-renowned artist. That's probably why they served delicious canapés at the buffet. So you missed a lot. You know, though, he suddenly tensed up and spoke ingratiatingly, unbuttoning his shirt suspiciously quickly. I missed you so much. In general, the next half an hour, Sharon was not up to suspicions. But they came to life again as soon as Denny brought up the subject of vacation. They had been arguing about it for days. Denny was trying to persuade Sharon to go to the sea, but for some reason she refused. You know, Sharon, I'm going to fly out, Denny suddenly announced. I haven't seen my mum in a long time. I miss her. And besides, I'm really sorry to waste my vacation on staying in town. Well, go ahead, Sharon muttered. Of course, that's it. Why meet with his D or T whenever, risking being seen by someone they know, when he can fly away for a whole week and enjoy himself to the fullest? Now everything makes sense. Everything. Denny soon flew away, and Sharon stayed behind. Denny's mother, Mrs. Barber, still lived in the seaside town. Over the years, Sharon and Denny had, of course, visited her several times. Sharon had developed a wonderful relationship with her mother-in-law, quite unlike the typical portrayal of such interactions. Mrs. Barber was a cheerful, lively woman who had worked all her life as a music teacher. Oh, I'm so glad that Denny finally has a beloved girlfriend, she declared after a few minutes of getting to know Sharon. I must admit I was starting to worry that I would never live to see this day. Why? Sharon asked in amazement. Because my son is already 28 years old, and he has never introduced me to anyone. Mrs. Barber laughed. Can you imagine, Sharon? Honestly, no, I can't imagine. Sharon shook her head. He is so handsome, strong, smart. Women must have fought for him. They were, Mrs. Barber laughed again. But Denny always brushed them off, saying, Mum, this is not it at all. I was honestly starting to worry, and then finally there's you, Sharon. It seems he was waiting for you all these years. It was clear that even if the stories about monstrous mother-in-laws were true, Mrs. Barber was not one of them. She had no intention of fighting with her son's chosen one, teaching her about life, or claiming to be anything more than just his mother. Even after it became clear that there would be no grandchildren in the foreseeable future, she found the strength to genuinely support her unfortunate daughter-in-law. Well, Sharon, she said, I won't hide the fact that this is sorrowful for all of us. But we will still hope, right? Don't you dare give up and don't surrender. She even knocked her fist on the table in emphasis. Don't you think it would be better for Denny to break up with me? Sharon suddenly asked. Without losing her composure for a second, Mrs. Barber looked at her seriously. Maybe, but I know one thing. My son loves you very much. Sharon, he is happy with you. I know it, and I see it. And what you have already given him is more important to him than what you cannot give him yet. After a night of remembering conversations with her mother-in-law and wrestling with tormenting suspicions, Sharon dialed her number. Sharon, dear, how wonderful to hear from you. We haven't seen each other in so long. Why didn't you come with Denny? Oh, I couldn't make it. I have so many things to do. And besides, do you know where Denny is? His phone isn't answering for some reason. Oh, he's been acting strangely this time. He's always going somewhere, running around. We haven't even had a proper conversation since he arrived. And he kept talking about some critical meeting. He bought a new suit yesterday, a white shirt. It's like he didn't come to the seaside, but to some symposium. Your beloved son didn't come to a symposium, but to a date," Sharon almost blurted out. "Of course, I will ask him to call you right away. Are you sure you're okay, Sharon? You sound sad," Mrs. Barber said, clearly worried. "Finally noticed," Sharon thought. "If only I could tell you, dear mother-in-law." "But I will see him in the evening only," Mrs. Barber continued. "He warned me that he would be late. His friend is opening a new restaurant on the promenade, and when he found out that Denny had arrived, he came begging for help. You know our Denny. Who could he ever refuse to help? Denny spends whole days there, installing some computer programs for them. It's called the Evening Breeze. Denny thinks it will become the best place in town. Oh, I've kept you listening to my endless talking for so long. Sharon, I just haven't seen you in so long. I will definitely tell Denny that you are worried. Well, take care, dear. Kisses. Bye." The mother-in-law hung up unexpectedly, and Sharon looked at her phone doubtfully. Denny had clearly inherited his restless, active and curious nature from his mother, and now, without asking almost any questions, Sharon knew where Denny was spending his vacation evenings, and she would see for herself whom he intended to spend his nights with. A day later she stepped off the plane in the familiar seaside town. It was easy for her to find the address of the restaurant that Mrs. Barber had mentioned. "What should I do now?" the woman wondered. "I'll go there, see Denny with some D, T, or another letter of the alphabet, and then what? What will that change?" She asked and immediately answered herself. "At least I'll look him straight in his smug face, maybe even spit, and then I'll leave. Just like that." Sharon looked determinedly at her watch and walked towards the bus stop. A small, nimble bus took her almost to the very promenade. As soon as she stepped out of the stuffy cabin, she immediately smelled the sea, and her eyes delightedly caught the turquoise sparkle of the sea surface. Of course, the Evening Breeze. What else would you call a restaurant here? She thought involuntarily. A large fenced-off platform led almost to the shoreline, resembling a small pier. It was clear that minor works and finishing touches were being done everywhere, completing a major renovation. But on the terrace, light tables, chairs and armchairs, as well as pots with tropical plants, were already arranged in a mix. The edges of a huge white canopy and white tablecloths, as well as wide palm leaves, were gently rustled by a barely perceptible breeze. "Would you like to have dinner?" a soft, gentle voice asked. "But aren't you open yet?" Sharon asked in surprise. "Yes, we're already starting working." The guy nodded. "I'm a waiter. You see, our official opening is indeed in a few days, but we are already serving our guests and learning their preferences, trying to consider and correct any shortcomings. So, would you like something to eat?" Suddenly, Sharon felt incredibly hungry. Her stomach rumbled, and she looked at the guy in fright. Had he heard? Probably yes, because he smiled slightly and made an inviting gesture towards the terrace. Sharon quickly ran her fingers through her hair, awkwardly tugged at her wrinkled dress, and stepped forward. The table was secluded slightly to the side in a small alcove, and even behind some displayed plants. Denny was nowhere to be seen. In fact, after a few minutes she forgot why she was there. A plate of baked fish and vegetables was placed in front of her. It was so delicious that the process of eating the tender, juicy white meat completely absorbed all of Sharon's senses and mind. "My dear young lady, the fish knife is a little to the left, this wider one, and what you're holding is for butter. It's blunt and won't help you at all," a familiar voice said above her. Sharon started and dropped the wrong knife from her hand. Denny, incredibly handsome, in a light suit that looked especially good with his tanned skin, with casually tousled hair, a smile, was looking at her. "And I'm here because—" she managed to say, realising that she had never felt like such a fool in her life as she did at that moment. "You were supposed to be here today," Denny suddenly said. "Why?" she asked in surprise. "Sharon, don't you recognise this place?" Denny suddenly asked. "What place, this one?" She looked around. "This restaurant, it was just built. How can I recognise it?" she asked in surprise. "What does the restaurant have to do with it?" Denny waved his hand. "I mean, the place. Come on, look around." She looked around carefully. "Well, what can you recognise? The shore is the same everywhere. Sand and water." "Oh, Sharon, you are surprisingly unromantic," Denny laughed. "OK, I won't torture you. You wouldn't figure it out until morning. Look, this is the very place where we first met. You were floundering, pretending to be a sea nymph, and I, like a young sea god, was saving you from the abyss. And over there, see?" He pointed to a group of white buildings that looked like small toys from here. "That's where I carried you." "Wait, and your mum," Sharon remembered. "She told me the name of the restaurant. Is she in on this? Is she playing along with you?" "Well, Mum just helped me a little," Denny nodded. "How else would I get you here? And it's such a special day." "What day?" Sharon asked warily, feverishly searching her memory. Denny rolled his eyes. "Sharon, you are incorrigible," he sighed. "Today is exactly 10 years since the day we met, right here." Like a magician, he pulled out a bouquet of flowers from somewhere under the table, thankfully large enough for Sharon to hide her blushing face behind. "Denny, who are D and T in your to-do list for the week?" she finally managed to ask. He looked at his wife and burst out laughing. After laughing for a good couple of minutes, he wiped away the tears that had welled up and said, "Why did you think that D and T were someone? Sharon, D is vitamin D, and T is tracksuit. You know, I always forget to take my pills or gym outfit, so I noted it down just in case." "Denny, I'm such a fool. Will you forgive me?" murmured the completely devastated Sharon. "Of course I will forgive you. Where can I go? Let's forget everything. Although I must admit I didn't know you were so jealous. I'm even a bit flattered. Listen, Sharon, the local chef, by the way, is absolutely wonderful. He specially prepared a dessert for us." Denny looked back and waved to the waiter, who nodded and immediately disappeared, but returned a couple of minutes later with a dish in his hands and, smiling solemnly, placed it on the table. "Here, happy anniversary." On the dish, judging by the appearance, lay a strawberry chocolate dessert. The chef had indeed worked hard, depicting their initials standing in a thin chocolate basket among strawberries in cream. The dessert was a small masterpiece of confectionery art, and any normal person would have frozen in admiration and then begun to worry, "How can I destroy and eat such beauty?" But apparently Sharon was not quite a normal person, because at the sight of the dessert she suddenly felt a sharp and completely unexpected attack of nausea. This was especially unexpected, given that Sharon had always been known for her omnivorous nature, strong stomach and excellent appetite. She, turning pale, jumped up, pressing her hand to her mouth, and rushed away. Denny, completely bewildered, waited for a few seconds and then rushed after her. He certainly did not imagine the reaction of his beloved woman to the specially prepared dish and the end of the romantic evening in this way. Staggering, she came out of the ladies' room. Denny was pacing nearby. "Sharon!" He ran up to her and took her hand, looking into her eyes. "What's wrong, dear? Did you get food poisoning? Oh, God, let's go to the hospital right now, to the very one where I dragged you with a piece of glass in your foot. Can you walk, or should I carry you?" No matter how bad she felt, she couldn't help but laugh. "Denny, 10 years have passed. You won't be able to carry me now." Half an hour later, they were at the hospital, where fortunately a doctor well known to Denny was on duty. Sharon came out of the procedure room and quietly sat down next to Denny, who had rushed towards her. "Well, did you get food poisoning?" he asked worriedly. "I'll tear this place apart brick by brick. I don't know what I—" "Wait! Don't shout." Sharon reassuringly stroked her husband's hand. "They are not to blame. My condition is only your fault, Denny." "Dear, I'm pregnant." Denny shuddered and looked at her. If there was still any silly, unwanted suspicions left in her foolish, restless, and distrustful mind, they completely and without a trace dissolved in the radiance that lit up in his eyes.